The Niners are getting back on track after a slow start. All credit to them. 3 wins in a row. What do you think of their pattern of sort of punting the first 2 months of the season and then getting their shit together?
Okay. I hope you guys can hear us because I'm really enjoying doing this show instead of Iggy. First of all, I want to praise the 49ers. We're 10 games in, and they have found what Iggy calls their identity. They're a pass-first team, and they are a hell of a defensive team. And they're very promising. I'd say they're an extremely promising team. The pattern is the last 2 seasons, they've started dreadfully slowly. And my theory on that is that Kyle Shanahan is a slow starter. Iggy, why don't you explain, or if you want me to, I can explain what I mean by slow starter.
You tell me what you mean by a slow starter.
Okay.
I'm a slow starter today.
Yeah, you are. And I can hear you just great. And I look at me with the phone in my ear. It's very technocratic.
It looks good. I like it.
Okay. Here's what I mean by a slow starter. I think he doesn't understand what his team is immediately. He goes in with an idea, and he's stubborn. He goes in with an idea of, we're going to, i.e., be a run-first team. This is what we're going to do. What he doesn't do, and what other coaches, and I'm going to say Bill Walsh, they don't go in with an idea like that. They go in, who are my players?
Yeah.
What is the best way to use these players? And Bill, who was very mentally agile, which I don't think Kyle is. Kyle's intelligent, but not mentally agile. Kyle takes a while to convince himself not to impose his system on the team and to come where Bill Walsh would have been the first week. Who are my players? What do I do with them? So I think he's a slow starter because his intelligence fights against his stubbornness. That's what I mean.
Yeah, and in a sense, what you're saying is he doesn't acknowledge reality. He's
That's
stuck
another
in his
way of saying it. Yeah.
Right. He's stuck in what he thinks the world should be like. But
yes,
he's there every day at practice, watching training camp, and he's just not necessarily reacting quickly. Like, hey, this guy's kicking ass. Maybe he's for example, Brandon Ayuk has been kicking ass since May, since OTA started. But Kyle's still in the Deebo Samuel mode because Deebo was good last year. And it's taken him this long to figure out maybe when I'm in the red zone, I want to throw to Brandon Ayuk because he's in peak shape and Deebo isn't. It took him until Thanksgiving.
That's right. So you say not acknowledging reality. Fine. Not reading it right. Not reading it right. And again, thinking that his view of reality is the real reality, when in fact his view that he wants to impose on the team is in a way a theory, a fantasy, and what he has to do is give it up and see, what do I really have? Who are we really? And it takes him about 10 games to do that. On the positive side, he does it. Some idiots, like the guy in Denver, can't do it. He has someone else calling his plays, and they still lose. So what I'm saying is, praise to him that he can do it, and it gives him enough time. But it's like someone in a fight gets knocked down a lot in the first 5 rounds and finally comes on. Well, those first 5 rounds take a lot out of you.
Right. And Kyle Shanahan doesn't make the adjustment until he's been knocked down 5 times.
That's right.
Right.
This season 4 times. He got knocked down 4 times. There are some games he should not have lost. And I would think if he were to play Denver now, he would not lose to them, or Atlanta. But he did then because he's a slow starter.
Yeah. And it's maybe he can say, this is our process. This is how we do things. But no, it's not a process. This is not a way to do things. You need to start quicker. You need to find a way to broaden your margin for error, because now 2 years in a row, you're trying to walk the tightrope at the end of the year.
I agree, Iggy. And what I'm saying is he should start in game 1, not in game.
Andy Reid does.
In game 9.
Especially if he's a genius. Dad, if he wins next week, he will be able to be 500 for the first time. How about that?
Well, mazel tov if he has it. So again, I don't want this to seem like a shit on Kyle, because we're saying he apparently has figured it out. We can't say for sure. He apparently has figured it out. We'll learn a lot more in the next few games. So we're praising him for that. We're saying he needs to figure it out sooner. And I have something else I want to say about it. Who does he consult? We assume he consults his father the way you and I consult with each other. Maybe there should be someone else he talks to help him get off faster. Clearly, Mike, the last 2 seasons hasn't done it for him. There may be another person, Mike Holmgren. I mean, it's he's a very bright man and he's a very nice man. I just throw out a name. It could be Shloimeh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think and I'm not sure he's a guy who goes and asks for help. When I was a younger person, I asked for help. I knew that I didn't know everything. He, I believe, needs a little help from an older person, someone who knows how to get off fast. And
but that assumes that he's open-minded, and his whole problem is that he's stubborn.
And in fact, I had used the word stubborn. So let's phrase it, because I'm an old teacher. He's not open to learning.
No. Well, I mean, but hold on. He is, but a little late.
Yes, his feet have to be held to the fire before he learns. Whereas, again, Bill Walsh was a better coach, a brighter man, and was more famous. Yeah. He won 3 Super Bowls. He learned all the time. He even asked me questions. A schmuck. He asked me, but he asked all his coaches, what do you think of this? What should we do here? Always asking, always wanting to learn. I don't think Kyle is like that. And I think to be a good teacher, you have to be a lifelong learner.
I don't look at Kyle as a good teacher. I look at him as being very specifically talented in certain ways, but he doesn't have a teacher's temperament. Robert Saleh does. D'Amico Ryans does.
Tell me what you mean he doesn't have a teacher's temperament.
A teacher's temperament gets the best out of people, sees potential, and brings it out of them. That's what a good teacher does. And Kyle is the opposite. Kyle's like, he tests you. He like, oh, you think you're special? Well, what about now? And he search for your faults. It makes you insecure. I think he's the opposite of a good teacher.
That's fascinating.
Now maybe he may bring out the best in you if you're like a competitive person and you need like someone to hate, someone to prove wrong. But that's not a teacher. That's like an adversary. He's more of like an adversary as coach. That's not what Robert Saleh's like.
I see. And if he has someone with a sensitive temperament, he might crush that person.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
But I think he's smart enough and self-aware enough to know that he needs defensive coordinators like Saleh and D'Amico Ryans to balance him out.
Yeah. Again, he needs someone to get him off faster, but he may not be open-minded enough to want that person, to listen to that person,
right,
to even be aware that he needs that person.
Right, because his whole thing in life is that he's always right. So it's hard to admit when you're wrong, when you're always right. It's a tough one.
I want to ask you a question. Are we doing okay in this broadcast?
I think we're doing a great job. Yeah, I like it. You holding that phone up to your ear. It's a good look. I'm okay.
You're okay. When you talk about Shanahan, this is a serious question. I know if I were to say, do you like him? You don't like or dislike. You're removed from that the way I would have been. Mm-hmm. But it seems like in a certain sense you disapprove of him.
Yeah. I think he's been given too long of a leash. He's been given too many opportunities to prove something. I don't think he's really a head coach. I think he's a coordinator. And I think he's arrogant. And I think he gets a lot of hype and a lot of defense from everyone in the media. For what reason? I mean, he really is an arrogant defensive personality in press conferences, and I don't understand why. Like, Mike McDaniel isn't that way. Robert Saleh isn't that way. Well, most coaches, good ones, aren't. And I don't understand why he needs to act that way. But I'm sure he's a really cool guy, like, in his spare time.
But you don't get to see him in his spare time.
No, nor would I want to. But I don't know. Good for him figuring out what his team can do by week 12.
Well,
it's nice.
Yeah, but he figured it out
figured it out.
In the 9th game, I think he figured it out.
In the 9th game, he rested. Mikey 49er says, travel section on the road with Cohn. Can't wait. Thank you. I'm glad you guys liked that little series I did this weekend. David Butler says, Trent Tippin plays so the defense won't hurt him, but I see it hurting the rest of the O-line, i.e. Mike McGlinchey. Thoughts? That's exactly what the offensive line coach said, Chris Forster. That's exactly what he said. So let's see if Trent Williams cares. Love it, Lowell. This comment via Messenger Raven, says Kevin. People are liking your style today. Dave says, what's up, guys? You two together are my favorite show. No disrespect to the other guests. Love how you guys are together. It's just awesome. Thanks, Dave. My dad thinks I'm in a bad mood tonight, but I'm warming up.
He's warming up. He didn't want to do the show. And I said, let's do it on my phone. And he was giving me the stank eye.
The stank eye. Still not a fan of Shanahan, but it was a good game. Yeah, it's true. Dave's on a roll. He says, Lowell, were you ever at Sierra College way back when Niners practiced there? I went every summer, nearly daily.
Dave, I was there every year. And you want to know something? It was very hot up there. I remember that. But it was so informal. We would eat in the dining room lunch and dinner with the players. We weren't allowed to sit with them, but we knew them. They sat with us. We sat with them. Afterward, you would take walks. I took walks with Charlie Young, with Dwight Clark, Steve Young. I never took a walk with Joe Montana, but I would sit and talk to him there. So Sierra College was my idea of what training camp should be.
Dave again says, Lowell, you, sir, are no schmuck. You created a legacy, and Grant is carrying the torch. Hell yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Invading Robot says, hey, Grant Lowell, journalist question. What are the expectations for both parties in an off-the-record conversation? Can you use that conversation as an unnamed source? How is it an on-the-record conversation? How is an off-the-record conversation useful as a journalist?
Okay. This is a really interesting question, and I'll do it fast because maybe there are people who are not interested in journalism. There are different kinds of off-the-record conversations, and you have to have the ground rules before you start interviewing. So let's say I'm interviewing Joe Blow, who's a general manager of some team. And he says, Lowell, this is off the record. I said, okay, Joe, let me ask you this. Is it off the record? May I say someone in the organization said? No, you cannot say that.
Yeah.
May I say someone in the league said? Yes, you can use that. Or no, then he says you can only use it for background. And meaning you have an understanding of it. You won't screw up when you write it, but you can't even really write it. You know it.
You can't say you have a source.
You can't say you have a source. But if you get a second source, you can write it.
Yeah.
If you get someone who's trustworthy and maybe in the organization who says what Joe Blow told you is true, you can use it.
That's right. No matter what Joe Blow thinks about it.
Right.
Black Orchid 772 says, I think Grant disapproves of Kyle's methodology.
I'd say that's pretty obvious. And
absolutely.
I think what we're saying is we're not disapproving of Kyle as a person, although Iggy thinks he's too stubborn, where his methodology gets him in the hole.
Yeah.
In the last two seasons in a row, it gets him in the hole. That's not a good methodology.
D'Amico Ryans doesn't take half a season to figure out which players to play and how to use his defensive personnel, but Kyle does. David Sir says, who had the better performance? I didn't watch the Cowboys this weekend. I know they played really well. Did you catch them? I don't know where I was.
Cowboys?
Mexico? I was in Mexico. They weren't really showing the Cowboys.
Okay, let me tell you. The Cowboys had a better performance. They humiliated Minnesota, held Minnesota to 3 points. Am I wrong on?
And Minnesota was the team to beat in NFC before. Yeah, okay.
And as opposed to the Schlemiels from Phoenix or wherever they play. So, the Cowboys had a better game.
Yeah, the Niners beat a backup quarterback. They did. Colt McCoy. Kevin, thank you very much.